130 para take one. No speed.
Ready, and action!
People tend to think that they know history, especially with very famous stories like Anne Frank's story. But with Miep, you're coming at it from a sideways angle that forces you to see it from a different lens.
Miep Gies was Otto Frank's secretary at the company he started in Amsterdam after he fled Germany. Miep was a young girl in her 20s when he asked her to hide his family.
You need to take your time to think it through.
No, I don't. What do I do?
We wanted to tell the story of the ordinary people who did these extraordinary things.
These incredibly banal issues that come up just in the life of being a young woman are juxtaposed with these really high stakes.
What would you have me do when Mr. Frank asked? Say no!
Ask me.
I didn't think I had to consult you before deciding to save a person's life.
It was really important for us to make this story feel modern and relevant to sort of wipe the cobwebs off it.
What you've got to remember is that even though these big historical moments were going on, Miep's marriage problems weren't going to wait until the war was over. Experiencing growing from a girl to a woman wasn't going to wait until the war was over.
You know what your problem is? You don't have a sense of humour.
Because what I just said was really funny.
Tony and Joan have really captured that brilliantly, the humanity of the situation, the realness of what these people were actually going through.
Looks so beautiful, and Jan looks so handsome. Why are you being so sappy all of a sudden?
It's not told through a documentary point of view.
Margot might be older, but I am more emotionally sophisticated. Anne's story is definitely relevant today because racism and anti-Semitism is still happening in this world. Different format, but it's still happening.
It just felt like the right story at the right time. To have a story that speaks so profoundly about compassion, the similarities with what it was like to be a young person back then and what it is like to be a young person now.
So you couldn't keep your mouth shut once. I'm the crown princess of not being able to keep her mouth shut.
We shot outside the Frank apartment, and I took that opportunity to just say, let's all just take a minute to recognize the task ahead of us, how we can honor those people who sacrificed themselves.
If we turn away someone we know we can help, we become people we don't recognize, and we don't exist anymore.
It's a great mission of the show to kind of make people look around them and look at their own world differently.
Miep's message was always, I am not special. You can do this as well. Anybody has it within them to do this, to make a difference in someone's life.
I felt like it was the right story at the right time, given what's happening, well, around the world, really, but to my eyes, mostly Ukraine and Eastern Europe. It just felt like to hear stories about normal, everyday people saying yes and throwing in and helping. It felt like the right piece of work to be working on.
I think I've often shied away from historical dramas and period pieces because I find myself feeling somehow distant from them and I can't connect, but I was really taken aback by how contemporary this felt and how connected I felt to this character and how, I don't know, fully like fleshed out and human all these people felt that kind of have been like immortalized for me in history and like this book as in Anne Frank's diary.
About 7 years ago, Tony and I went to Amsterdam with our kids, and we were going through the museum, and Miep was a young person, you know, when she started working for Otto Frank. She was newly married, she was a party girl, she was, you know, she was about our son's age. And I remember sort of thinking, oh my God, she was him. She was just a regular person who probably said yes to her boss and then didn't know what she was doing, you know, and some had bad days, some days was tired, some days, you know, was confused or wanted to go out with her friends. Like I just suddenly, because of, you know, I know my son, you know, it just struck me that showing her humanity in the same way that when we read Anne Frank's diary, we're so compelled by it because she lays her humanity bare. She shows herself, you know, what's that expression? Thorns and all?
Warts and all.
Warts and all.
Or thorns.
So
Thorns, warts, and all.
Anyway, just to show this really ordinary person who stepped into history and became extraordinary, became a very exciting idea to us.
Well, there were some people at the Anne Frank House who were very generous with us with documents, photos, footage, source material that isn't openly available to the rest of the public, and that was really great. It was really great to actually see the characters you were playing. I mean, it's sort of daunting because well, I don't think I'll ever get as skinny as Otto Frank was. But it just also reminded me that what I'm really responsible for is the narrative that Tony and Joan have given us, and to use that character to kind of explore the themes of that particular narrative. But there was a lot of really interesting material. For me, personally, particularly around the stuff that Otto didn't want published in the diary, that was very useful source material.
The first thing I did was go to Amsterdam and go to the Anne Frank house, which I'd never been to, and just kind of cycle around and kind of immerse myself in this iconic city, which is still kind of operates now in the same way that it operated in the 40s, as in everyone cycles everywhere. So yeah, I visited kind of Miep's old apartment and the Frank's old apartment and cycled a few of her like bike routes like to work and stuff, and I also used Miep's own autobiography, Anne Frank Remembered, which is a book she wrote in the early 80s, with kind of her first-hand take on these events, and that was kind of my main piece of source material that I utilized, yeah.
Well, we were lucky enough to shoot outside of the Frank's actual apartment in Amsterdam, and that was pretty wonderful. It's now used, the Anne Frank House uses it as a retreat for writers. But they gave us access to go inside and see it, and I know for all the actors that was really powerful. And then to shoot outside on that location, we took a moment just to remind ourselves and the crew of the task that we'd set ourselves, and to do our best to honor the memory of the stories that we were trying to tell and the people who were involved. Mm-hmm. And we shot primarily all of our locations in Prague, at the Barrandov Studios. So we built a full-scale model, of the annex and the offices and their apartments, and then we did hero exteriors in Amsterdam over about 2.5 weeks. So it was really exciting, and to just kind of see what, in very practical terms, the way those people were living in the annex for 2 years, mm-hmm. and the amount of space they actually didn't have was pretty remarkable.
The first day for me was the most remarkable, not necessarily in terms of the scene, but just that was the day that I was introduced to Belle, and I knew that once we started acting together that I was going to have that to fall back on. It was a very comfortable relationship. We worked in the same way. We worked very quickly. We were very open to whatever the other person was giving us, and it felt alive. It's sometimes acting is like tennis, and when Belle and I first started working together, I felt right away that it was going to be a good match. I think the hardest part for me was probably the 3 hours in prosthetic makeup every day before we started.
Yeah, for me, I mean, working with Liev and Joe Cole, who plays Miep Gies, my husband, was just a complete pleasure. They're both kind of the smartest, most similar actors to me as well in terms of process that I've ever worked with, and yeah, like basically everything Liev. I agree with that about you.
Thank you.
The hardest one for me was definitely the end. It's pretty much nearly the end of the show after they find out that Anne and Margot aren't coming back, and they did die at Bergen-Belsen. And by then I'd really become quite close with Ashley Brooke and Billy Boulay, who play Anne and Margot. So I don't know, putting myself in Miep's shoes and I don't know, think about them. It was just, it was very emotional and yeah, it was a tough scene to shoot for sure.
For me, a remarkable day of shooting was also challenging in that it was the scene where the Franks, Van Pels, and Dr. Pfeffer are arrested. And they're brought downstairs and outside for the first time in 2 years and loaded into a wagon. And we shot that towards the end of the shoot, and these people had become, you know, their performances were so real and so alive. It was very moving. And we shot it, of course, from Miep's point of view, so it's her watching these shadows go by the door, and it was just gutting.
Let me think. Tony, you go first.
We shut down an entire 3-city block in the center of Prague, right outside the Prague Philharmonic Hall, which doubles as the Jewish theater, for this sequence where the Franks go to see a concert at the Jewish theater with Miep and Jan, and then we jump forward in time and the Nazis are clearing Jews out of the city, and we witness this remarkable moment where the nurses at the cradle are smuggling babies onto the tram. So that was, in some ways, the biggest scale that we had, but incredibly exciting, and just to kind of stage the entire thing and deal with the insanity of how clever it was that they came up with this way to smuggle these babies out right under the noses of the Germans is one of those great moments where you're just like, it reads like something that somebody made up, and the fact that it actually happened is pretty remarkable. But to realize that with 200 extras and period tram and, you know, Nazis and guns and everything was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the scene where my favorite moments to shoot were really some of the quieter moments that were just moments between Miep and Jan. It wasn't the sort of the grandest scale, but those were my favorite moments just because it felt like we were pointing the camera and pointing the script, pointing the pen at different things that you weren't used to seeing. Just two of them talking in the bath as they're lying there having a beer and just being together at the end of the day and saying, like, are we allowed to think about our own happiness or not? We have to be happy, or how, small fleeting moments, or how are we ever going to survive? But having guilt about being happy, I don't know, that some of those emotional moments where they connect, I felt were the most moving to me and the most thought-provoking. Scale-wise, there were a lot of moments that were more cinematically impressive than that, but those little moments had the biggest impact on me, I think.
All right, listen to me. You can't go back. You can't run. And you can't show any fear. Let's do this.
I hear they're cracking down on the Jews. That must be scary.
We have to hide our allegiances, or else we're not gonna make it.
Miep, what I'm asking you to do is dangerous. If you get caught, you could get arrested, or even worse. I need your help hiding my family. You need to take your time to think it through.
No, I don't. What do I do?
Can I help you?
Tell me where I can find Otto Frank. So you're going to tell me?
He's my boss and my friend. What would you have me do when Mr. Frank asked? Say no!
Ask me.
I didn't think I had to consult you before deciding to save a person's life.
People have lost everything, and still they resist. And I have to resist too. We're gonna start a fire.
I need to remember that things were good so I can believe that they'll be good when this is over.
We have to choose when we fight them. We don't let them choose for us.
My only job is to protect my family.
Did you hear that? The Queen wants my diary. And I can't wait to see it.
Get down! Have your heads.
We can't save everyone. But if I don't try, I don't think I'll be able to live with myself.
Turn darkness into